I think the reaction of many people is not just frustration but anger. We had a kamikaze mini budget 2 weeks ago. As a direct consequence, mortgages are going up, and not by a little. Hundreds of pounds, £500 is the average per month. Now, there are not many people, not many families that can afford that kind of increase. Sometimes these things happen because of some world event. This is self-inflicted with the government's mini budget 2 weeks ago. So I think there's frustration, there's anger. This afternoon I've been speaking to first-time buyers who can't buy now, people coming off their fixed-term mortgages who are really worried about the future. It has human consequences. Millions of people paying the cost of the government's recklessness. Reverse the kamikaze mini budget, and the sooner they do that, the better. The direct consequence of what they did 2 weeks ago is hitting working people. It's wrong, it's unfair, and they need to reverse that budget, and the sooner they do that, the better. What we need is stability, and you're not going to get that from this government. Look, the argument that what the government did 2 weeks ago with that kamikaze mini budget is a plan for growth is ridiculous. The Prime Minister has taken the economy, driven it into a wall, and pretending that this is pro-growth. If you have consequences that increase mortgage payments by hundreds of pounds per month, that is anti-growth, it's a destroyer of growth, it certainly isn't pro-growth. I think it's very important that the opportunity is taken to reassert and re-emphasise the unity of response that we have in relation to Putin's aggression and imperialism. I think that's the single most important thing in relation to the meeting today. And on that issue, whatever other issues we have with the government, in the UK, I've made it clear there will be no political divide in our support for Ukraine and standing up against Putin's imperialism. I completely understand the position that nurses have been put in. We've had wages stagnant for a very long time, prices going through the roof, a situation made worse by the government in its mini budget, not better. So I absolutely understand the position they find themselves in. I don't want the strikes to go ahead. I don't suppose any nurse wants the strikes to go ahead. They want them resolved, and I want to see them resolved. But most important of all, we need a government that is capable of stabilising the economy and tackling the cost of living crisis. And that is why it's so important that we, the Labour Party, are putting strong proposals on the table to stabilise the economy and to deal with the cost of living crisis. Because in the end, that's the only way to deal with it. Otherwise, we're in an ever-decreasing cycle.
And the pay increase?
Well, that will have to be negotiated by the negotiating bodies. But as I say, I completely understand the position the government's put nurses and other people in with little growth in the economy for 12 years, wages stagnant for the best part of 12 years for many, many working people, prices going through the roof. The government's just made it 10 times worse with their kamikaze mini budget. I saw the news of the stabbings coming through, and obviously that's deeply concerning for all of us, and our thoughts have to be with the victims and all of those affected. I do think we need a joint response to this to make sure that we lower the crime levels across London. That is a joint and shared responsibility. But there is no getting away from the fact that over the last 12 years this government has cut the number of police officers. Yes, they're putting some of them back now, but they haven't even replaced the ones that they've taken away. And so I don't think the government can simply say this is somebody else's fault. Actually, all routes lead back to the government. The most important thing that we can do to help people with their mortgages is to reverse that mini budget. The second important thing is to put in place the checks and balances, because not only was this a kamikaze mini budget, it was done without the OBR, without the usual checks. That's why the markets reacted. And sometimes we talk about the markets as if they're sort of some abstract thing. These are investors with huge amounts of money who don't have confidence in what the government did 2 weeks ago. That is the central problem, which is why we need to reverse the mini budget, and the government needs to introduce the checks and balances that they should have put in place 2 weeks ago. They've been totally irresponsible. The Labour Party has changed under my leadership. We've done a lot of work in the last 2.5 years, and what I think everybody saw and recognised at our conference last week was a Labour Party that is ready to govern, ready to deliver, and actually has a plan for the economy that will work for working people. Now, I know that across the West Midlands, I need to earn every vote. And that's what I intend to do. But just at the moment, I think the contrast could not be clearer. You've got absolute economic chaos under this government, with many people in the West Midlands facing, price hikes, mortgage payments that they can't afford directly because of this government's recklessness with the economy, compared with a careful, costed, stable plan from the Labour Party. And I think I've got to make that argument. I've got to earn every vote. But just now, I think people are screaming out for some common sense ideas, plans that will actually secure and stabilise our economy and take us forward as a country. An economy that works for working people, recognising that it's the people who go out, drive the buses, the trains, work in our hospitals, our factories, hospitality, the technicians, the schools, the hospitals. They are the people that grow the economy, and the Labour Party has them in mind when it has a plan to grow the economy. So making the economy work for working people, recognising they're the ones that grow the economy, and making sure the economy works for them is absolutely central to my plan. Where there's evidence, terrible evidence of people being forced to go to food banks, etc. That is a shocking indictment of 12 years of Tory failure. We have to deal with the cost of living crisis. That means obviously freezing energy bills and making sure that the oil and gas companies who've made excess profits pay their fair share. The Prime Minister says, well, I won't ask them for any money, I'll put it on the never never. And it's people in the West Midlands who will pay the price for that because they'll be paying the tax for that. So that's the immediate answer. What we then need to do is to make the economy work for working people, have plans to grow the economy here in the West Midlands. I was with the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce this morning, talking to them about how we would do this with local initiatives. They're up for that. They want a government that's serious, that can stabilise the economy and has a long-term plan for the future. And that's what we're discussing. That's what the Labour Party would put on the table. My wife works in the NHS, so I know how acute this crisis is. It is a topic of regular conversation in our household. And it's disgraceful that the government's allowed the NHS to get into this position. We need staff, and that's why last week we announced 10,000 nursing and midwifery staff, doubling the number of entrants coming in, because it's a staffing problem. It needs to be gripped, and we need to make sure that we've got the staff available to the NHS to deal with some of the terrible consequences we're seeing at the moment. I think take another look at Labour. We've changed as a party over the last 2.5 years. We are now in a position where we are making the running. So if you look at who was the party, which was the party that argued for a windfall tax on oil and gas companies to pay for energy bills, it was the Labour Party. Who was the party that says we need to freeze your energy bills because you won't be able to pay this winter? It was the Labour Party. Look at what we're saying, look at what we're doing. But I would also say, I know I have to earn every single vote across the West Midlands, and that's what I will set out to do. I'm leader of the Labour Party, leader of the opposition, dad of 2 kids, an Arsenal supporter, but my absolute passion is to have a Labour government that has the opportunity to change the lives of millions of people in this country, because after 12 years of failure, I think that working people deserve a lot better, and my only mission is to put us in a position with a Labour government where we can deliver for them, to have the opportunity and the privilege to serve, and to recognise that being the Prime Minister is an honour and a privilege to serve.